Hi, and welcome back to Jen and Dan's Natural Healing with Plants. I am Jen, your health educator, coach, and herbalist.
And I'm Dan, your exercise specialist and fellow master herbalist. Today we're addressing a common dilemma. What to do with all those herbs sitting on your shelves?
Yes, it's happened to me, and I'm a master herbalist, and I still do it. I buy a bunch of herbs because I read something about them, so an article or a blog or something about this fabulous herb, and I order it, and it takes a couple of weeks to get it, and then it sits here on my counter because I can't remember where I read about it or what I wanted to do with it, what it should combine with. So Dan, has this ever happened to you?
Of course. I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed because there's so many different herbs available and you buy them and then you forget what is that for? I don't remember. How so you just like forget it, and it's good to
Yes.
have somebody to teach you, but also, I mean, if you're like me, I have herbs in boxes that I don't even remember that I have, and then I'm like, what did I get this for? Now I
I'm an
don't.
herb hoarder. We
Yeah,
have so many. We have jars and jars of herbs. They're so pretty, and they're on our shelves over here. But then I also have a cabinet of my tinctures and other herbs. And then actually have a walk-in pantry because I'm a huge cook. For those of you who don't know me, I do culinary coaching too. And in the pantry, there are shelves of bags of herbs, and so many that my husband ended up creating an inventory sheet because we have so many herbs. And we do use a lot of them, but some of them they sit there unopened.
yeah, I'm the same way. Last week I threw away a lot of my tinctures I make because they've been sitting there for so long, unused. They're starting to get dusty, and they were. I just threw them away. I was like, you know what? Just get rid of them and start over because yeah, man, I'm sure you have a closet too where you make tinctures. And so,
Yes. Yeah, they're all in my apothecary cabinet. And so I made a bunch of glycerites. So
oh,
this
okay.
may happen to you too. So you learn a new technique, so I learned how to make salves, so I make a bunch of different salves, and so then I'm giving everybody salves, and then I forget, why was I going to use that salve? I was going to make it, I made it for something, that kind of thing. And so then I'm like, well, how long do they last? So I end up throwing those away. And then I made a bunch of glycerites because I had learned all about glycerites, and how they're good for kids. You can give them alcohol tinctures too, because when you really break it down, it's a tiny bit of alcohol. But I made all these glycerites, and glycerites really only last about a year. And so I was like, these have been down there for at least 3 years. And so then you have to throw all those away. So I feel like I'm wasting um, some of my herbs too.
Yeah, I feel that when I threw those away last week, I thought I was going to cry.
Yeah, I know how much money am
But
I throwing away,
I
but
know.
that's the thing too. And so a lot of people, I'm sure our listeners too, garden and grow your own herbs or grow your own flowers and things like that. And so it's the same thing with gardening. It's good to have a reason why you're buying it. Where are you going to put this plant or whatever, and what are you going to do with it? And the same thing when we buy the dried herbs or the tinctures or whatever. I prefer making it myself, but what are you going to do with it? Are you really going to use it? Because it can be quite an investment. The herbs can be expensive.
Yeah, I mean, and I tend to get some. Sometimes I'm on a regimen, and sometimes even I won't stick to a regimen. I'll get sidetracked.
Me too. Me
So
too.
what I've done lately is I told myself, just I'm going to use only the herbs that, right now that I'm going to use. I'm going to set those out. Like right now,
Hmm.
I'm doing complete bone and tissue, and I'm doing herbal calcium, things like that. So I just have those out, and a
Hmm.
few of my tinctures. I used to have 100 different tinctures out on this shelf,
Yeah,
so it's easy to. Of course, you're not going to use them that way. There's just too many.
right. Right. I have mine in clusters. So the same thing. So I have the ones I want to take in the morning and the ones I want to take in the afternoon and the ones I want to take before bedtime. And so I have like three little clusters out where I see them, but and everything else is in the cabinet or away.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but there's so many different ways to make teas, and what I've found is when I meet with clients, we'll talk about different herbs or teas or whatever, and then we meet again, and I'll ask them, did you make whatever? And it's funny the little things that hang us up. And so I know I remember way back when I started buying herbs, dried herbs and things like that. I'd get them and then I'd be like, okay, now what? And I'd be afraid, is it okay if I combine this herb with this herb? Can I do that? And is it better for me to have it as a tea or as a tincture or, whatever? And so I was so afraid of doing it wrong that I didn't do anything at all. And I'm finding that happens with clients too. And so I have to actually walk them through, how to make the tea or how to make something. And so I don't know if you've seen that too.
I've seen that. I've also seen people that were scared to take the herbs because they're afraid they were going to hurt them or, you know,
Yes, yeah, and we'll talk about some ways, some things that you do need to be concerned about. Medical disclaimer, once again, we are not medical providers. We do not prescribe, we do not treat, we are not telling you to do what we do. We are just educators. We're teaching you about the herbs. We want you to do your own due diligence and really, do your own research before trying anything. Now, that being said, how many people run off to like the drugstore and pick up a pain reliever? I don't want to use name brands, but people go in, they buy it and they take it, they give it to their kids. Oh, my kid's going to get shots at the doctor today, so I'm going to give them this preemptive pain reliever before we go. And it's like, what?
yeah, yeah,
And it's the chemicals in there. I mean, you can read the side effects on there on that container, and you're putting it in your baby before you go, whatever. And so the same thing, people, oh, I just went and got some cough medicine, or I had a headache, so I'm taking this. They don't even think twice about opening that bottle and taking it that has all these warnings on the side. And some of them, the biggest name brands, say on there they cause kidney damage. And so
yeah,
that versus taking, whatever. And there
yeah.
are some, there's going to be side effects with anything. I know someone who is allergic to apples, you know, and so I know someone who's allergic to hamburgers too. So, don't say that's a vegan thing. So anybody can have a reaction to anything, which is why I'm saying do your own due diligence. But I want people to actually be able to use the herbs and not to be as afraid of the herbs. There's some that are so gentle, like the ones we learned at the School of Natural Healing,
Yeah.
marshmallow, peppermint, chamomile, we talked about last week. Now there can be an allergy in there for some people who have problems with I don't remember which one it was, with the chamomile, but there's some herbs that are really safe, like lavender. Lavender essential oil, we talked about in another episode, that the essential oil is so safe you can put it directly on your skin where all the other essential oils will burn your skin. And so, some of these we don't need to be as worried as we are, and we need to really think about, the plants. And so I know on the podcast you can't see what I have here, but like I'm holding up, I have an herbal tea. This is just a tea. And then I also have a tincture. So both of these are herbs and they're both are safe for me. But when you think about it, this tincture is so much stronger than this tea. And so people are afraid to make teas and drink teas, but they're actually going to be a little bit safer. They can still be really strong. They can still be very, very powerful. And so you still want to do your own due diligence, but start with simple teas. And so some people like the convenience of tinctures, but if you're worried about safety, then maybe making your own tea blends would be good. And you can look at that. And something else that one of the reasons why I really like making my own herbal teas is I cannot handle licorice root. And so a lot of people, they love licorice root. When you go into the store and you look at teas, almost every tea product has licorice root in there. It's sweet and we like sweet things. But not everybody can tolerate licorice root. And so it's hard for me to buy an already made tea blend that doesn't have licorice root. So I love making teas. Now you can see how rustic this is. This is my tea in a mason jar. All I did is I put the teas in there and added water, let it sit, and then my tea is ready and I can just strain it through a little strainer. No fancy tools needed. I could use a tea ball if I wanted to, but this is the way I like to do it. It makes it super easy and I can just make up my own teas. How do you feel about teas, Daniel?
I really like teas, and I always add that we always use distilled water to make them because it pulls out more of the constituents. And it's a good way to experiment because you can try different herbs. Once you make a tincture, it's made, but with teas, today I could try chamomile tea with some peppermint. Tomorrow I could try hibiscus. And also, when we went to school of natural healing, if you notice his manual, a lot of the routines, they use a lot of teas. And I thought, well, teas must be very versatile. Turns out that they are. You can use them for so many different things. You can use them for sleeping. You can use them to help you
Mhm.
get over a flu. There's a lot of different uses. So I do like them. And I like to, I know you it seems like you make a lot of cold brew teas.
I
Like
do.
yeah,
Hmm.
that way you don't hurt any of the constituents at all. So I see how that works.
Yes, yes. So, excuse me. So for like this one, well, first I want to say, so while using distilled water is the best, which is why we do it, it extracts so many of the nutrients. If you don't have distilled water, don't let that keep you from making the tea. Make the
Yeah.
tea anyway. And then when you can use distilled water, use distilled water. But when I use a cold brew, I like show and tell, so it's hard when we're on a podcast. When we use a cold brew, it will extract a lot of the medicinal qualities, but it does not extract some of the tannins and some of the other products in there that maybe aren't as medicinal, that can be inhibitors to different things. And so that's another reason why I like cold brews. Now, I like hot tea. And so what I usually will do is I'll strain it into like half of a cup. And then I'll heat up hot water and add hot water to it, which is diluted, but you can see this is a whole quart of tea. And so I'm going to still drink the whole quart of tea. It just might take me all day to drink it all, which is fine for me. That's just what works for me. There are some teas that I do make hot. Um, I just like to do the night before. I just make up my whatever blend I like, and I think this is so pretty. For those of you who can see it, it's getting kind of dark because you can see I'm already halfway through. But you can see I have calendula flowers in here, and so they're so pretty. I love seeing the flowers in the tea.
So I guess some advice for people that they have a lot of these herbs out and they have their shelves are full of herbs. What's some advice you would give them so they won't feel so overwhelmed by the herb collection?
Oh, okay. Well, one of the things is just smell the herb. When you first open up one, smelling the herb and see, what does it smell like? Because there are some that maybe you don't want to make it as a tea. So like I love
Yeah.
echinacea. No, not echinacea. Echinacea, yeah, I know is going to be a strong one for your tea, which is very, very, very useful if you are sick under certain conditions. I just read recently the pandemic virus does not respond as well to echinacea as others, so it's actually not recommended. Do your own due diligence. But I was thinking of ashwagandha. So like I love ashwagandha. It's not right for everybody. It is a nightshade. Now I'm not anti-nightshades. I do eat nightshades and I love ashwagandha. But ashwagandha tastes terrible. So I don't know what your experience is with ashwagandha. I do not want to drink ashwagandha tea. And so
No.
there are things like that. And so when I smell it or whatever, I'll go, okay, I don't want to make a tea with this. A tincture is probably going to be better for that. Also, when you look at certain teas, like you can look at this chamomile tea and it's got these pretty little leaves and flowers, and everything in here is all leaves. That's not going to take very long to get the medicinals out. Where if it was a root or a twig or something, like if I'm looking at, I think it's is it uva ursi that has lots of twigs and things in it. Yellow dock is usually the roots. Ashwagandha is going to be a root. Those are going to take a little bit longer. And so if I do a cold brew, it's definitely going to be an overnight. But it's probably better if I heat it too. And so if it's roots, I'm going to soak it overnight and then I'm going to bring it to a simmer in the morning for a few minutes as well, just to pull out some of those medicinals. And so I don't know if that's helpful or not. That those are just ways that I like to look at the teas. But let's talk about some of the common ones that most people have in their house. You have peppermint tea, which I don't know anyone who doesn't have peppermint in their home. Um, just a peppermint tea by itself. It's delicious. For some people it helps headaches. For me, it actually can give me a headache. I don't know, something about the smell. But it can be calming, but it can also be energizing. And so for me, I don't like to have peppermint later in the day because it is very energizing for me, but for some people it's calming. It helps, it loosens the sphincters, which sounds really strange, but we learned this from Dr. Schultz at the School of Natural Healing. And so that can help release gas. And so I don't know if you remember that, Daniel, that was hilarious. All of a sudden everybody was worried about having gas problems in class because they drank the peppermint tea. But you can also put peppermint, in cooking. And we'll make brownies and add the dried peppermint leaves. Like, it doesn't even have to be the peppermint extract, the dried peppermint leaves to our brownies, or make a peppermint tea and add, the peppermint liquid to something. And peppermint is wonderful in oils and things like that too, to give you that cool feel.
Well, another one is chamomile. It makes it, I think I've talked about this last time about how
Mhm.
calming chamomile is for me, and it's a good one to take before bed.
Yes, and making it as a tea is fabulous. I would prefer that one as a tea over anything. And some people even put it in their bath,
Yeah.
as well as lavender, which we've already mentioned before too. But both of those can be so soothing. I am not a big fan of lavender in tea. However, I do like to pair it with like valerian at night to sleep, because I don't like the smell of valerian. It smells like dirty socks to me. And so a little bit of lavender actually makes it smell better, to me. But lavender can be used in so many different ways. And so what I was thinking when we started the episode was, like, for me, it's usually dried herbs. I have all these dried herbs that I just don't know what to do with. And a lot of them I throw into soups and stews and beans and things like that. When you really think about it, adding herbs, like, how many people put oregano in a sauce? So you're making a tea in your sauce, right? It's just, we're pulling out some of the flavors, the aroma and the taste and the smell. The same thing with your other herbs. And so when I look at, like, burdock root, so remember, it's a root. We want it to probably cook a little while. So that's a fabulous one to put into stews, making a broth, anything like that. You're cooking it. And for me, I don't even strain it out. It's one of those things. Now, you could, if I'm making a broth that I want to be clean, after I strain it, then I'll put burdock in there and then I'll just strain the burdock root back out. But, a lot of people eat burdock. They stir fry burdock and eat it. You can buy it fresh, usually in Asian stores or international markets, but I have it dried, and so I'll throw it into soups. The same with some of these other herbs, like we've talked about on other episodes, culinary herbs and sage and stuff like that. But I'm trying to think of other herbs, like recently. So I bought dong quai. So I have this big bag of dried dong quai, and I know it's great for reproductive health, but I've never opened it.
Yeah.
It's like, why did I buy it?
And that's the dilemma. So if I have herbs like that sitting around, I'll just put them I'll make a tincture with it because it lasts so much longer. And so I'll have
Yes.
it in my closet. That's what I usually do. I'll go through, if they're getting older, I'll just throw them in 100 proof vodka and just preserve
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, that's
So,
a great idea. Yeah, so let's talk about that too. So I held up the bottle of the tea versus the tincture. And so tinctures are going to be a lot stronger. They're a lot more condensed than having the dried herbs, but they're so much more convenient. Like, if you want to have, like, I like drinking a bedtime tea at night, but when I tell a client to drink a bedtime tea, they're like, "What? I'm going to have to wake up and pee in the middle of the night." I don't have to do that. Knock on wood. Hopefully that doesn't happen to me. But if that is something that happened to me, then I'm going to prefer taking tinctures.
yes.
Yeah, and making your own. They're so easy, like Daniel said. So if I were going to make, well, this chamomile, the herbs, chamomile as a tincture, then, like Daniel said, all you have to do, cover it up in vodka and let it sit for, how long do you do? 4 to 6 weeks?
I do at least 2 weeks, but I usually let them go for about 4 to 6 to make sure I get everything I can get out of them.
Me too. And then you just strain it, put it in
Yeah.
a dark colored bottle with a label and a date. Now, tinctures last, I think they said they'll last forever. I usually will throw mine out after about 5 years. If you make them with glycerin, it's a little bit more technical. They only last about a year. It's not as simple as just covering the herbs in vodka. And then making oils. And so you have to be careful using oils because like I'll make the oils and I'll keep them in my fridge, and I use them within 3 months. But I do keep them in the refrigerator because oils can go rancid. But oils are great too, and I do love using oils. Like I'm drinking calendula tea, but I love calendula oil on my skin. It's wonderful for the skin, and so that's another thing too.
So there's a variety of ways. Also, I mean, you can, if you have dried herbs, you can also grind them up and put them in capsules. That's how a lot of Christopher stuff is done, and they work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I take a lot of them like that now, and it works really well that way as too. So there's different forms. You can do teas, like we're talking about. You
Mm-hmm.
do tinctures, you can do capsules, you can do oils, you can do um ointments too. If because those are kind of tricky for. I haven't made a lot of ointments, but you can make them out of beeswax and things like that.
I love that you brought up the capsules because I've done that too, like the ashwagandha. So you order a pound of ashwagandha powder and then you smell it and you go, oh, what am I gonna do with this? You can make
Yes.
a tincture with powders. It's a little bit more challenging because that powder is really, really gonna swell, but put it in capsules.
Yeah.
That's so much easier. Excuse me. And you can buy equipment to stuff them. It's going to take a while, but I have actually just stuck capsules in there. So a lot of times I don't like taking a lot of capsules because what is in the actual capsule, right? And so a lot of times I will use the ones that don't taste so bad. I will open them and empty them into a smoothie or chia pudding or something like that. I actually prefer to buy powders now and not in capsules, but I've actually broken up the capsules and then I just reuse the capsules.
Yeah.
Now I don't reuse ones that have anything harmful in them, and I don't break open any that say don't break them open. You know, if you're taking something like HCl, don't open that capsule.
Oh,
It needs to be in the capsule to protect you as you swallow it. So once again, do your own due diligence. Don't do exactly what I do, but sometimes I will. I'll just reuse the capsule of probiotics. If I make yogurt, I empty out the probiotic into my yogurt, and then I reuse that capsule to make like I was taking ground cloves for a while, and I love cloves, but that's a lot of cloves, and so I prefer to have that in a capsule.
yeah. So lots of good tips. I think hopefully our listeners maybe gave us some more ideas about how to use all the herbs they have. Now, there's
Yeah, well, and teas are just so easy. Like I said, smell them, taste them, put them on your tongue. Like that's how we had in school too. You know, like echinacea numbs your tongue. A good quality echinacea is going to numb the tip of your tongue. And you know, a lot of people like echinacea, but for me, I prefer a tincture over echinacea. You know, like elderberry or juniper berry. You know, juniper berries taste pretty good, and so you know, taste it. You know, what does it taste like? And then you'll know, oh, maybe I could have it with this or that. Now there you can be more scientific and get into the science behind it, but for most of them, just make a single herb tea or make a couple of them and see, these two would taste really good together. Like I have in my jar here, I just have like 3 in here and play around with it. So the rule is usually a teaspoon per cup. It doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule, but usually it's 1 teaspoon of dried herb to 1 cup of water. And so in here, I usually have put a heaping tablespoon of dried herbs in my quart jar of water. Now, sometimes it'll be 2 tablespoons, which is fine. It doesn't have to be um, exact.
also want to say to make sure you get good quality herbs. Like I like
Yes, we didn't talk
wild-crafted
about
or
that.
organic. Yeah, and the
Yes.
companies. Well, I mean, we're not affiliates with any of these people, but Mountain Rose Herbs has excellent herbs.
Yep.
Holistic
And holistic
Botanicals.
botanicals.
Yeah,
Yep, I buy most of mine from Holistic Botanicals and some from Mountain Rose Herbs, and sometimes I'll get them from Frontier or from Star West. But I
yeah,
do always make sure that they say wild crafted or organic because you
yeah,
definitely don't want to have anything sprayed, especially if you're making, well,
yeah.
anytime ever. And you want to make sure that any tinctures that you buy are definitely wild crafted or organic. And you want to pay attention to what kind of alcohol is used as well. So that's important to me as well. Yeah. So did you have anything else you wanted to add? And the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I had so many clients who have the herbs, or they haven't even purchased the herbs because they just weren't sure exactly how to make the teas. But like I said, it can just be as simple as throwing them in a jar, covering it with water, and straining. I used to use this little handheld strainer.
Yeah, just say, you have to get over the fear. This is not rocket science. You can just, it's really going back to our roots, because for centuries we use herbal plants for medicine. I
Yeah.
mean, most of them are very safe. The ones we teach are really safe. I mean, they're actual food. So,
Right.
and if you have just make teas, and like I do, if you have a lot of herbs that are getting older, throw it in some vodka. It's so easy, and then that herb will last you 5 or 10 years. Or I mean, I've heard lifetime even, but I usually keep them
Hmm.
about 5 years, which is a long time. So
Yes. Yeah. If they last that long.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So
Yes. So get curious, play around with your herbs. You bought that for a reason. And so you can always do a search. Make sure you're looking at reliable sources for the herbs, but try to go back and remember, okay, why did I buy this? What is it useful for? What does it taste like? So be curious, research the herb, and then experiment. Listen to your body, something that we've all moved away from. I'm guilty as well, but listen, what is your body telling you about this herb? Like I said, like peppermint can be soothing for some people, it's stimulating to me. And so I know I'm not going to have peppermint later in the day. I'm going to have it earlier. And so just listen to what your body's telling you about the herbs, and get curious, and just make some teas and play around with them, and let us know when you try a tea. Let us know what methods have helped you. Let us know what your hangups are. What herbs have you bought that you're like, why did I buy this? Sitting here on my shelf, I haven't used it because I can't remember why I bought it. So we want to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and share with your friends.